Good afternoon. We'll get started in just a minute. Waiting just for a few more people to join. So let's get started. Good afternoon. My name is Arnie Jacobson, and I'm director of the SHOTS Energy Research Center. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to an event of the Sustainable Future Speaker Series here at Humboldt State University. These events date back to 2005, and this is an interdisciplinary lecture series that revolves around issues related to energy, the environment, and society. All the events are free and open to the public and are sponsored by the SHOTS Energy Research Center, the Environment and Community Graduate Program, and the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. Before we move over to this evening's event, I wanted to remind everyone that we have 3 more talks coming up this semester. Next week on October 29th, we'll go back to our normal scheduled time, which is 5:30 p.m. And the talk will be by Miles Lennon. And the title of that talk is From Decarbonization to Decolonization, a Framework for Action on the Green New Deal. Dr. Lennon is an environmental anthropologist at Brown University and a former sustainable energy policy practitioner. The following week, on November 5th, Nithya Ramanathan will discuss data-driven public health design for underserved communities. And she'll share her experiences on scaling NextLeaf's cold trace solution, which has been deployed in 23 countries and now protects the vaccine supply for 1 in 10 babies born on Earth. We'll close this, the fall semester lineup for the speaker series on November 12th with Lena Dalasha, Associate Professor of History here at Humboldt State, who will speak about holy waters and the colonial control of land space and resources in Palestine. If you're interested to join for any of those events, information, registration for those registration for those webinars can be found at the SHOTS Center website, which is shotcenter.org/events. It's also possible to access that information through the Environment and Community Department website. Just one little bit of housekeeping before we move forward. If you'd like to ask questions of today's speakers, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. The presentation will be followed by a brief Q&A period. If you have any technical difficulties, use the chat box and send a message to my colleague, Maya Kelly, and she'll excuse me, do her best to help you resolve the problem. And a recording of this talk will be available later this fall semester at shotcenter.org/events. Without further ado, I'll pass things over to Jana Ganion to introduce tonight's event. Thank you, Jana.
Thank you, Arnie. to all the attendees and to the Humboldt State University College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, the Environment and Community Graduate Program, and the Schatz Energy Research Center, of course. Thanks for inviting both Karen and me to this speakers forum. As Arnie mentioned, we're in the in really good company in this speakers lineup this season. And so I really feel fortunate to be here to talk about communications today. My day job is working as Sustainability and Government Affairs Director for the Blue Lake Rancheria Tribal Government. And I just want to take a moment to say that Blue Lake Rancheria is a Wiyot tribe, and I want to acknowledge that all the speakers today are presenting on Wiyot ancestral lands. I also co-chair the National Working Group for Tribal Energy Development for the U.S. Department of Energy. And in California, I'm appointed to a number of technical advisory committees that look at the intersection of the climate crisis, technical issues around mitigation, adaptation, and resilience. So I wanted to throw this slide up here because all of us in this region, if I might say so, are looking for ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improve reliability across many lifeline sectors, such as energy, water, food, transportation, and our topic of today, communications. Due to COVID-19, we've had to stick more to our homes, working from home, learning from home, attending virtual doctor's appointments, other activities that COVID-19 has pushed from in-person to more of a digital connection, like this event today. So we've seen a sharp increase, really, in the importance of telco, telecommunications, which I'll shorten to telco, on a personal level. But even before COVID, telco was increasingly core to running our most critical infrastructure. It's now an essential public utility alongside power and water and others. And increasingly, it's the backbone that enables those systems to operate more efficiently and with greater reliability. When we started to build the electric microgrids with our expert partners out at the Rancheria, I incorrectly thought it was going to be more of a hardware approach, new wires, new transformers, and that kind of thing. It really turned out to be more of a software approach, or about half hardware, half software. And each component, the solar arrays, the batteries, the microgrid control systems, or the brains of these systems, they each needed their own internet-enabled access, so that the partners that we were working with could have direct access through the internet into their equipment in both normal operations and emergencies. And of course, the microgrids themselves in turn keep the telecom infrastructure powered and operating. So it's now really a codependency. As our featured speaker once said to me, if you're in the energy business, you're really in the telco business. You just may not realize it yet. So certainly that was the case with me at the beginning. We know, because of where we live, that rural environments in the United States still lie across a digital divide. Internet and cellular service is expensive, and as the saying goes, but at least it's not good quality or reliable. Other reasons telecom is so vitally important these days is e-commerce. Think of your favorite local restaurant's online ordering tool, digital banking, digital payments, digital wallets, social media, accessing all of our data, including all of our cat photos that we've moved into the cloud to store. And though telecom now supports a lot more of what we do, it's still pretty siloed in operations and regulations, and we need to look at ways to fix that. Gaps in telecom resources and reliability have been highlighted by the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as recent public safety power shutoff events and outages. I'll just give one specific example. In the 2019 public safety power outages in October in Humboldt County, the telecom infrastructure started dropping out at about the 24-hour mark. If the outages had lasted longer, we would have had much more serious impacts, including not being able to communicate with each other digitally. And emergency communications, such as 911 calls, emergency response agencies being able to talk with each other, have been inoperable at various times in the region due to a variety of causes, including vandalism, power outages, wildfire, and others. In addition, earthquakes, tsunamis, and other climate impacts, such as intense storms, can also cause issues. And some of the past issues are captured here in these Lost Coast Outpost attention-grabbing headlines. And we thank them for the reporting here. So it's my pleasure to shift gears to say that we're here today to discuss some solutions. To that end, we need our experts around us now. And so it's now my pleasure to introduce Karen Eckersley. Karen is a communications engineer by training and has a technology construction, integration, and consulting background. The telecom infrastructure project she built for Ireland now supports its globally recognized tech sector, which is also a key pillar of its economy. She also built fiber, a backbone for high-speed networking across 21 countries in Europe. And her cable project in Germany, which is larger scale, provided the first internet choice and presumably more affordability for people in many parts of that country. Her day job is now Communications Division Program Outreach Coordinator for the California Public Utilities Commission. And fortunately for this region, she now lives in Humboldt County, where she's working to help improve communications resiliency. We're so fortunate to have your expertise here, Karen. If you don't mind, for me and for others, I'm just going to tee up one thing. Many of us are telco novices, and so could we at some point just cover the basic architecture? How do we actually connect to the internet and talk on our cell phones here? Karen, please take it away.
Thank you, Jana. I'm thrilled to be here, and it's so helpful to be located here in Humboldt County. I feel your pain. Thank you to yourself and to the Chat Center for inviting me. My disclaimer is that I am speaking for myself with expert information and my opinions, but the Commission speaks through its decisions. Your introduction covered a lot of territory. So as you suggested, let's just dive straight in. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is an overview of communications infrastructure so that we can all be using the same language. Let's see, I'm going to share my screen here. Yes. Okay. Can you see this? Yes, okay, great. So this illustration is going to help us with the discussion today. From left to right on the screen, we'll see the home connections on the left to the core of the network on the right side. I'll be talking about all that infrastructure, the facilities today, because it carries the services that you use. Internet, Instagram, telephone service, World of Warcraft, WebEx, Zoom, Netflix, everything. So consider this one network with many parts that use it. So on the left side of the screen, I have labeled the bottom last mile. Above that, you see the last mile technologies that serve the end of the communications network. So the house potentially has 3 wired connections and 2 wireless ones. Copper twisted pair wired connections comes from your local telco. In Humboldt County, that's AT&T or Frontier. People like these telco connections because they were designed to operate during a power outage. Power for the line comes from the central office. The bottom connection is a coax cable connection. Around here, that's Suddenlink who is your local cable provider. And then there's a fiber connection on my diagram because that's potentially available, but is not here in Humboldt County. And is that correct, Jana? You don't have fiber in Humboldt County?
I'll have to leave it to the experts, but I don't think so. I think most of ours is cable where it comes to the house.
Right. I don't think you have fiber to the home anywhere here. Okay. So above that, the two potential wireless connections in this diagram are the cell tower, which can provide service for your devices, and way up at the top, you can see a satellite. Cellular service doesn't necessarily have the throughput of your wired connections, and of course, you have to have a cellular signal there to be able to get the service. As you get closer to the edges of the cell, the service degrades. And the satellite, it is an option here, but there are problems with the throughput and affordability. Okay, then in the center of the diagram are the facilities which concentrate the last mile connections. In cable, it's a building called a head end. Sometimes in fiber, it's also called a head end. In telco, it's a building called a central office. On top, you can see a cellular tower. These facilities, all these facilities, when they're modern ones, require a fiber connection. Sometimes they have to operate using microwave and other kinds of cabling when there isn't fiber, but that's increasingly not the case. Cable and telco do have fiber sometimes closer to the home, connecting to other boxes that you can see in the street, but I didn't put those in these diagrams. Okay, so let's look on the right side and see the middle mile side. So between those facilities and the data center on the right side is the middle mile portion, and there's a lot more fiber optic cabling. Indeed, most of the cell towers have fiber connections these days, and when you get to 5G, you absolutely have to have fiber. It's a prerequisite for having 5G service. So a lot of the processing for the cell tower is done elsewhere, and speedy delivery is necessary for that. That's why it has to have fiber. Middle mile has interconnections for other service providers that I've indicated on here, but that does depend on the kind of service and the kind of service offered. So let me go just to the next chart, and I will show you a little bit more about this data center, what's going on at a data center, and it's the cloud. We aren't doing all the processing on your computer anymore or at the cell tower. The technology is doing that somewhere else. And one critical element of a data center is that the communications to it have to be super fast and reliable, has to be fiber optics. And at a data center, there are racks and racks of servers that are processing information and generating all of these necessary computations. Okay. So the power, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, let me just jump in, Karen. So I wanted to ask one question because it tees off a conversation that we were having here locally. There are large power requirements for these data centers, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's another example of where we see an increasing overlap between the telco infrastructure and power.
Yes, I completely agree. There's a lot of opportunity in this area, and there certainly is a lot of opportunity for green technologies. And there's another part that I want to illustrate for this chart, and that is that from the overall picture that fiber optic cabling is the enabler. You also see in this situation that your last mile service provider is also your internet service provider. So if you have AT&T broadband, AT&T is your ISP. If you have Suddenlink cable, Suddenlink is your ISP. They aren't required to share that last mile infrastructure. So whoever owns the wire gives you service at the last mile. Okay, so at the last mile, again, I'm sorry, in the middle mile, you are technically required to share that infrastructure if your company is a telecommunications carrier. That's according to federal law. It's called the Duty to Interconnect. So think about it. It's totally necessary for a telephone call. What possible good would it be if you couldn't dial every single telephone number everywhere and reach everyone? Like, what about if some carrier decided not to let calls go to Los Angeles? That just wouldn't work at all. So all telecommunication carriers have to allow that interconnect because the value of the network is that it really is one network. And then, as I said, at the last mile, if you're building fiber to the neighborhood for cable or telco, then you don't have to share that with other service providers. And that makes it super hard for another service provider to give you as the end consumer some kind of choice, because they would have to then build all the way to your home. So, and you can see other perverse actions like outages when carriers use the same facility or it's one serving an area.
So, you know, getting back to my first question about architecture, is there a map of Humboldt where we can see where all this fiber is located?
I saw all of the Lost Coast outposts where you listed all of those big fiber outages. And Jana, there is not. It's a byproduct of how communications companies in California were deregulated. So carriers don't have to publish their maps. Usually they claim confidential competitive interests. Now, we do know that there's fiber heading south on 101, and we do know that there's fiber over Highway 36. And we know about a fiber project that's being built to take traffic to the north. That's the Kuruk project. I'll talk about that route in just a little bit further.
Okay. So let me just jump in because I think that takes me to another part of the resiliency question. We're so reliant on wireless, and during the PSPS, for example, it was hard to find a signal. We had people running their businesses from the Blue Lake Rancheria parking lot and our conference rooms because we had internet and no one else did. And as I said at the top, we lose this, and the headlines underscored it, we lose those communications, including emergency communications. So what are some of the ways in which telecommunications companies are required and or subsidized to provide reliable service, minimum quality of service, and emergency communications?
Yeah, that's the thing about wireless, right? It has to be present to be useful. I learned that when I came up here in States. You can drive out of wireless coverage very easily. So my agency does not have rules for wireless service providers about the location of their cell towers or the quality of service for wireless. We do have service quality rules for old school, plain old telephone service, but not for broadband service. The carriers have been fighting about that at the federal and state level for a long time. Communication providers are required to connect 911 calls once they get them, but then, you know, we're back to the lack of good wireless coverage because most 911 calls actually come from wireless handsets.
So it's the same infrastructure for 911 calls.
That's the thing, yeah. The 911 infrastructure and facilities at the first part of the call all use the same equipment. And then there's a specialized router that delivers the 911 call to your local public safety answering point. They call that a PSAP. It's the police or sheriff or highway patrol. All this infrastructure has to operate specifically for a 911 call, but everybody knows that's not the only kind of emergency that you have. So we also need to make sure that people can call their doctors, their schools, check on Aunt Sue, all of the other kinds of things. These can be emergencies just like everything else.
So, you know, when we first started, well, I guess the PSPS threw new light on this whole question of emergency communications and 911 calls. And so one of the questions that we're asking is, do these communication carriers get paid with presumably public funds to deliver 911 calls?
Yes, Jana, they do. The state pays for those calls to be delivered to public safety answering points. That's what happens to the 911 fee on your phone bill, tens of millions per year. There's good news with that. The state is upgrading that system to something that's called Next Generation 911 or NG 911. So there'll be faster routing of calls between agencies, better fail-safes in the system. Also, technology moves on, so it's time to upgrade. But very much to your point, the main point is that it's all one network that handles everything. So let me talk about what we're doing just for a moment to keep that system operational. I'll talk about the resiliency in power outages. Let me find a way to share my screen again. Here we are. Here we go. So the CPUC released an order in July for backup power for wireless companies. We're currently working on one for wireline. And this slide shows some of the key provisions of that order. And that is that wireless carriers should implement backup power with a duration of 72 hours for facilities that are located in Tier 2, 3 high fire threat areas by the middle of next year. That they have to build and maintain redundant networks, that they have to harden their networks to be able to withstand damage, use these temporary facilities as required, the cows and the colts and all the other acronyms that come together for temporary facilities. And they've got to improve their communications and coordination processes with first responders, with public utilities, with the IOUs, with the commission, with the general public. And they need to have emergency preparedness planning for employees to make sure that they have current staffing levels on that. So there's some due dates for operational plans and for resiliency plans. And as I said, the backup power for 72 hours is due next year. And there is also a proposal out for wireline providers, which have different architectures. This slide shows some of the issues that we're looking for comments about and to understand the wireline situation. The commission will be considering those comments and will propose a decision. And you have very good local advocates who are providing information about the situation in Humboldt County to the commission with facts and figures in this proceeding, so that the remoteness and the situation here can be considered as well. But both of the wireless and the wireline rules for backup power, and one of the most important parts of our universal service commitment for California is that is service present at all? And that's really what we're looking at.
Yeah, so I'm more familiar with some of the supports, like as we look for ways to improve the situation, particularly in rural environments. You know, I know that on the energy side, there is a lot of programmatic funding and technical assistance through the USDA. I'm wondering what you see as solutions to bridge kind of the digital divide and provide robust telecom in rural areas in general, and hopefully then this one in specific.
Yeah, thank you for that. I would look at this question within the rubric of what our universal service obligation is. And I will go back to sharing my screen again. I'm getting pretty good at this here. And that is that, and sorry, I don't mean to talk through the Public Utilities Code. Good grief, we'll be here for a while. But there's some big brushstrokes that you see here. And our statutory direction, the first one that I highlighted is universal service is about affordability and availability of telecommunication services to all Californians. And that means that we need the infrastructure to deliver those services, and we have to find a way to make them affordable. So here's an overview of the existing programs that the CPUC has in place. And I apologize for the tiny type on here. I'll just take a couple of seconds to give a broad brushstroke on these. So the California Advanced Services Fund pays for infrastructure to build broadband service. We have two funds that pay service providers to provide service in high-cost areas. We have a program called the California Teleconnect Fund that matches the federal E-rate program for community-based organizations and schools. And we also have a program for deaf and disabled communications, which provides equipment, assistive devices, and interpreters for people who are challenged for various reasons to be able to communicate. And our primary affordability program is the Lifeline program, which provides almost $15 per household per month, plus approximately $9.25 from the feds to subsidized communication plans for households. So there's a lot there. We're working all of these programs to the limit, and we're working to modernize them, but there's still problems.
Yeah, so but those kinds of programs, and again, I'll speak from the energy side, like I've done a lot of work to get my arms around a funding and a technical assistance matrix, because it is really like pulling together a puzzle. But it's good to know that those things are out there. I think, as you say, the region has all of these, the region up here has all these conditions. So the other thing that I think we're interested in, and this has been happening a lot in context of other new industry that is poised to come to this region. What I'm interested in, what skills do you think we need up here? Engineering, engineering, field work, electrical, obviously. Are there opportunities for ancillary businesses, those kinds of things? Because when we think about building this backbone of infrastructure, we think about what kinds of workforce development, skill building, capacity building, ancillary business opportunities are going to come with it. And we want to be forward thinking on that. So yeah. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. All of those things that you mentioned are required. When these projects are here, we want local people working. And some of these skills are crossover functions for power work, tree trimming, telephone pole climbing. As you said, for building electrical infrastructure, you have the skills to build communications infrastructure. Cal OSHA, telephone pole climbing, fiber splicing, installation, construction laborers, traffic management. These are the skills that many people have who are now working in city or county water departments, departments of public works, other areas. And as you do more of these kinds of work here, those people should be coming locally and being trained and to know how to do that. Big bus loads of people, you know, coming in from a service provider who brings them in from, you know, some other state is really not helpful for the local economy here. Yeah,
we like local people trained to solve local problems.
Yeah.
So as you know, with your experience in Ireland, Germany, across Europe, and now in California, I'm interested how you see telecom, like we've just kind of been touching on, as an underpinning for local economies, given the possibility in Humboldt County and this region of a large broadband cable coming from the east and linking up with an Asia Pacific cable coming from the west. There's at least one data facility that is in the planning stages of being built in Arcata, for example, but you know, I'm sure there's other things going on. So can you talk a little bit about some of the projects, understanding that your role with the CPUC has to be respected, but can you talk about a few of the projects that are underway?
Absolutely, yes. Let's see. I'm gonna share my screen again. So here I have listed a couple of projects that are going on in the area that are very interesting. I've shown three here. The Klamath River Rural Broadband Initiative, which was approved by the Commission this year, is providing a long fiber connection from Orleans to McKinleyville and the last mile for many points in between. Orick, Wetchpec, Orleans, Pequon, amazing. Yes, here's a picture of that project. And I'm sorry I couldn't get a better map of it, but you see McKinleyville in the bottom, and then up through Orick and over, if you know the area, and I'm getting to know it a lot more now, up Bald Hills Road, and then down the Klamath into the Yurok land and up into Orleans. And then that will also connect with Siskiyou Telecom. And here, so let me come back to this slide. The CPUC, so for schools, there is an organization called CENIC, which is the Corporation for Education Network Initiatives in California. And they have continual RFPs for fiber connections that connect schools and libraries under the FCC E-rate rules. And I'm sorry I didn't have a quick list of where some of those are. Their website doesn't publish them, but I think some of your local advocates can speak to some of those coming up. And then finally, the CPUC approved a project that connects from Eureka to Redding along the 299 route. And the builder, or the proposed applicant for that came back to us with a route change that removes some of the highway construction along 299 from the route. The CPUC has not yet acted on that proposal for a number of reasons. One is that the grant program that we have is having a lot of success. And I have the link to the current applications that the CPUC is looking at. We have approximately 54 applications for almost 500 million in broadband projects. So great news that there's that much interest, except that the California Advanced Services Fund doesn't have that much money in it at the moment. So we will be prioritizing some of the grants that come out of that. We will be awarding those grants according to our own rules, and that is important because the commission is required to have resolutions ready in November for public comment. So we'll be able to talk about what those are publicly very soon. The CPUC's website, which I've listed here, has the applications and the locations for them as well.
Terrific. Do you think you could speak a little bit to what all this sort of means for the area? To sort of reiterate it for me and others like me who may be new to thinking about it.
Yeah. So it helps provide connectivity for households and anchor institutions along the route, and it provides another route, obviously once it's built, out of Humboldt County to the north. So there is the ability to be able to use that so that some of those earlier press articles that you had, some of them were from the days when there was just one fiber connection coming up Highway 101, of course, and then, you know, a truck hits a telephone pole and, you know, there you are. So that kind of diverse routing and resiliency and redundancy is extremely important. And so having a fiber connection to the north and also one to the east is pretty important. But along those resiliency lines as well, there are other projects which are building resiliency in the area. If you'll indulge me, I'll spend just a second here talking about the FCC's tribal priority window. And that is the FCC provided an opportunity for tribes to apply for 2.5 gigahertz spectrum if it was available over their federally recognized tribal reservation. And 34 tribes in California applied for that, and the FCC is looking at those applications now and, you know, grinding through its government process to come out what the answer is. As a part of that, and for some of the other work that the CPUC is doing with tribes, the CPUC also has a program called Tribal Technical Assistance, where we provide capacity grants to tribes to pursue improved communications on tribal lands for technical feasibility studies, business plans, all kinds of things like that. So it's a great way to start to answer the questions that tribes have about their communications and other things that are going on.
Yeah, so I think, well, it's heartening to see these examples that are tangible and that increasingly from both the federal government and the state government, that rural areas are getting their due attention. So what else is on the plate that's worth, that we should be paying attention to?
Well, there's another huge opportunity for rural California that's called the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. The abbreviation for that is Rdos. And the FCC will be auctioning nationwide about $16 billion in universal service support in a nationwide reverse auction. Potentially $2 billion of that can go to California service providers to build infrastructure here. So the FCC made the eligibility for that fund to start at areas which, first of all, lack voice service of any kind, and also for those areas who a service provider has not claimed that there is a 25 megabit uplink and a 3 megabit per second downlink. So we call that 25.3. The exciting part about this is that the reverse auction starts next week. So service providers who win in that auction will receive 10 years of support to build the infrastructure that they propose, and they'll have to offer standalone voice service. So let's see. I think I have a map of this.
So being cognizant of the fact that it's 4:45 and we've got 15 minutes, I think, left for our discussion, and then we're going to maybe we'll take 20, and then we'll open it up for discussion. Could you take us through just sort of a specific example of what RDOF means here on the North Coast for us?
Sure.
And then we'll go into some of these, maybe some community and ownership models.
Okay, perfect. So I'll share my screen again and show you what this looks like. But stop me if I go too far, because it's pretty easy to get excited about a map. So you can see this now, yeah? Okay, perfect. So
Yep,
California map. Okay, so this shows in blue, in different shades of blue, census blocks that are eligible for RDOF. And so I'm going to do a pull down that you should be able to see there that shows, let me get my own picture out of the way here a little bit, that shows each county. And I'm going to move down to Humboldt County right here. And now when I click on Humboldt County, which we all recognize, you'll see here at the top of Humboldt that there is $106,524,530 available for 10-year support for these blue areas. Let me zoom in just a little bit more. For these blue areas in Humboldt County. Now, let me show you one more thing here quickly. So blue is eligible census blocks, but RDOF looks at eligible locations. So this is the map that shows the number of locations per census block, and darker ones have more census blocks, have more locations in them. And then I can do the same thing to show green for amount of money, and there's more locations mean more money, but I'll leave it on eligible locations. This is a public map, by the way, so I'll give you all the link to it so that you can go searching, because it's totally fun. Okay, shall we go to Blue Lake?
Yeah, let's give it a shot.
All right, let me go to Blue Lake. I'll go to Blue Lake, California, not specifically to the rancheria here. And let me remove the county eligibility. And you see the familiar Blue Lake Rancheria there. Can you see my cursor going around?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So then that'll allow me to point things out here. Let me come back out a little bit. So now we know where we are. So the brown areas are census blocks and their eligibility for the number of locations that are in them. So it looks like there's some that are in the 86 to 250 area up here. You know your area, they're a lot better. And then there's areas up here that looks like that's shaded for 251 to 450 areas. And then these are all boundaries of the different census blocks that you see there. So what I have clicked down here at the bottom, let's see, you can see, I click on this, it's going to show me the 251 RDOF eligible locations in that area, the reserve price for that area for 10 years, which is 3.3 million. And then each one of the census blocks you can look over. So essentially service providers are looking at all of this stuff and saying, heck, I want to bid to do the builds for this area.
So this seems a really useful tool, particularly if, like, we're interested in up here, looking for how our service could potentially be improved in terms of quality and reliability. And so this RDOF monies are in fact monies that are set aside, public monies that are set aside for a specific region. To understand a bit more about the service infrastructure, rates, and sort of ownership models. So to kind of take, it's like, that's sort of the bigger picture, at least one program that's coming to rural America. Can you speak to maybe how do we get our community arms around this maybe a little bit more in various ways?
Yeah. Thank you for that. So I've talked a lot here about fiber optics, like it's the only thing. I do that not because it's the only thing, as you saw from my first chart, but because it's the best thing. It's a future-proof technology, and as we need more and more bandwidth, throughput, gigabit, stuff we don't even know about now, it can support that for decades. So it has very low maintenance costs. And at the CPUC, we've been all hung up with speeds. What's the right speed? 10 up, 1 down, 25 3, 6 1. It's in legislation. But a minimum level of service has never been what anybody needs. We've been just lowballing the goal when we should have been knocking it out of the park. No one should be worrying about speed or data caps, and it should be affordable, right? So there are some other ways to deliver broadband service than we're looking at right now. So the CPUC held an en banc earlier this year before the lockdown, and we had a fiber provider there from Utah called Utopia that talked about what their model is. And they are what's called a neutral host, meaning that Utopia provides a fiber connection and the infrastructure, and then all these other different service providers compete to offer the service over their lines. So Utopia is a model of this public-private partnership. So I want to show you a little bit about what that looks like, because there's some pretty exciting pieces of it. Clicking on share again. Okay, so that was my planning in case that map didn't work online, but fortunately it did. Thank you, Owen. So this is the splash page for Utopia Fiber, and it says Utopia Fiber in 3 easy steps. So 1, check your availability. 2, choose your provider. 3, pick your contract type. So the next page is really what I want to show you, which is what is the service cost? So I have 2 pages here of ISPs that operate using the Utopia model. So as a subscriber, you pay Utopia $30 a month. They're your infrastructure provider. And then you pick the service provider that with the services you want. So you want internet only, you want phone, you want video, and all of these service providers provide different things based on what you want. So this is what this model looks like.
So so with this model, in Utah, did they have state funding for that model? And I guess and forgive me because I'm actually learning as I'm going along, so I have to capture my thoughts here. Listening to you is always like drinking from a fire hose, but that's a great thing. So so did they have state funding, and then how do you foresee something like that working here? Or
So Utopia is very proud. They're like, we don't take any federal funds and we don't take any state funds. So they have the Utah version of a joint powers authority. So They issue revenue bonds for their city builds. And as I said, they're in about 12 to 15 cities now and planning more as they go. They put them in about 40 or $50 million tranches, and then they pay back the funds in the 2 or 3 years, and that provides the funding for the next one. So again, you know, if you're providing water or running a water utility, you know, you're halfway there already. And I've got some models here that that we talked about both at the Commission's En Banc, which is on our webpage, and also recently during our hearings on Frontier. And so let me share my screen again. Let me show you what some of these models look like. So this diagram shows 5 components that public-private partnerships look at to determine responsibilities from left to right. They show increasing level of involvement in providing the service. So the first part in the big expense and time consideration is who owns the outside infrastructure on which your broadband rests. Who owns the middle mile? Who owns the last mile? As I explained earlier, those connections to the home. Who owns the telephone poles? Who owns the conduit? The next box over is who's going to operate the system, and the final box is who's going to serve the customer. So this is going to make a little bit more sense on the next slide. So let me just get there. So there's different ownership models here, and what you see on this chart is the colored shading shows blue for a public entity, and the brown is a private entity. And they have this particular model was put together by a company called, a nonprofit called US Ignite, and I'll give you the references for them as well. They did a survey all over the country and indeed all over the world where they reference who uses these models. So all of the models, all of the 5 models that are shown here are working now, they're proven. And this chart shows on the far right-hand side an example city. So let's walk through the top one, which is a very popular one, which is the full municipal broadband from Chattanooga, Tennessee. So they own their own electric utility, and they had terrible and no broadband service, and they own their own infrastructure. So end to end, they're providing the service as a public utility. So you look down there and you go, oh, where are these places? Oh, wait, Fullerton is in California. So let's go down to that model at number 4. So City of Fullerton has really great demographics, right? They've got a lot of really wealthy people, and they've got a fairly dense area. And so they said, well, what we'd like to do is have a private company, and they chose Sci-Fi Networks to build, own, and operate the network, but they have to offer open access to other ISPs who offer the service on top of that network. And so those ISPs are Ting, Gigabit Now, and a lot of other cool names. So as I said, US Ignite produced the diagrams, and they've got a couple of great papers that can provide some of the details about how some of these things operate. But it is possible. It is possible to do this.
Yeah, I think, again, kind of going back to where we started, I think there are always sort of chronic complaints, and we don't want to spend too much time admiring the problem. But there are chronic complaints around here about internet access, just outages happening. You know, I remember when I first moved to the area, a national conference call dropped, and I don't think people really believed me that there wasn't a way to reconnect because there was one cable that provided it all. And so, so these ownership models are really timely and useful as we consider this new kind of fiber backbone that's coming potentially to the region, and all of a sudden we're going to be connected to the world in redundant ways, and you know, we're going to figure out how to make the most of that. And so, you know, and then there's also the this idea that we should really dust off these telecommunication plans and update them, and figure out, you know, what this region wants and needs, and then figure out, you know, how we get there. Clearly there's some resources to get there. There's some funding, there's some technical assistance. So that's, it's always a concern, but it's not a worry. And so I think we will look at ways to, you know, to upgrade our infrastructure as well. And we have some specific problems to solve here at the same time. And so one of the other things that maybe we'll get to in the Q&A is that just another local example is that we have sea level rise as a big issue, and a lot of our infrastructure, including some of the telecom infrastructure, is in the pathway of sea level rise or groundwater inundation. We have to move a bunch of our infrastructure or redesign it anyway. And
yeah,
one of the things I know you and I have talked about, and we're right at 5 o'clock, but I just want to take 1 minute to kind of talk through this, is I think that there's, like a lot of us who are looking at this, think there's a lot of opportunity to de-silo telecom, power, increasingly electrified transportation, and these other utilities, so that when we're looking at one problem, we think about these other issues at the same time and try to solve for all of them at once, or at least as many as we can. And of course, the permitting is awkward. The you know, the regulations and the bureaucracies are siloed. But we can start having these discussions. And for this region, this is the perfect time to do it, because in a few short years, we may be one of the leaders. So, and we're going to need to have these climate impacts figured out. So just, you know, I don't mean to put you on the spot, although I would, you know, from your engineering background, maybe in the ways in which other countries across the globe approach this, do you see opportunities for alignment of utilities? We just went over the ownership models, which is obviously central component of all this, but also more like, what are some creative ways that people have aligned infrastructure and combined them together, maybe for a more cost-effective approach?
Well, you know, so from the perspective of other countries, they have a lot tighter regulation. So in some cases, they make everybody play together. They just make it together, and everybody goes, oh, that's what good government does, is they make everybody do that. There's not like this Wild West of, you know, I'm going to dig up the street 4 times kind of stuff, which is just super, super crazy. And I appreciate so much here that not only do you have, you know, regular disasters, the PSPS events, the fires, all these things that are happening that give the opportunity to look at what kind of infrastructure you need. But as you said, sea level rise, which is not a disaster yet, but it's right out there on the horizon. So you have the opportunity to do some larger level planning. And if you're crossing jurisdictions, you know, city, county, they have to be able to talk together. Trying to get everyone together for it is difficult when you're right in the middle of it and you're trying to fix something after a disaster. But if you're saying, here's what our plan is for 10 years to get to this point, and here's what we need, then you can work with that, right? So step 1 is how fed up are you? Step 2 is what do you want? And step 3 gets to a plan. right? So,
Yeah.
I'm very hopeful that step one has gotten you to step two.
Yeah, and just in brass tacks, we need to get a lot better about when we dig a trench, and I'll credit the tribe's facilities teams with always doing this. When we dig a trench, we need to put a bazillion extra conduits into it for future use so that we don't have to dig it up again. So, so with that, I will ask Maya to join us again, and let's open it up. We're only 6 minutes after the hour, which is pretty good for me anyway. Let's open it up to questions from the attendees, and just look forward to the discussion.
Yeah, so we have a question here from Leah, who comments, how and where should a community member start to improve internet service to our community? We have internet service microwaved from Eureka to Fairhaven. The receiving dish/equipment frequently goes down, often for weeks at a time. Most recently from February 13th to mid-April 2020 during our shelter in place, making work and school from home impossible. Fun fact, there is an AT&T fiber optic cable that runs on service poles right outside my house, but Suddenlink is our ISP.
Ooh.
AT&T serves the Fairhaven Business Park 1 mile to the north, bypassing Fairhaven, and runs to the Coast Guard Station 2 miles to the south. And a related comment that came in was regarding the Asia cable landing. Could you speak to the Point Arena lesson where the local community sits adjacent to the Manchester cable station, but doesn't have decent broadband connection? So I think both of those are talking about that question of just because there's access available in an area doesn't mean it gets to everybody. And what do we do about that?
Yeah. So I have a couple of answers to that, and one answer that you're going to hate, all of you, and I'm really sorry about this, and that is that infrastructure takes time. So if there's something that's going to be built, then it's not coming this fire season, right? So things are coming up. I can't specifically speak to the Fairhaven situation itself. I don't know enough about what's going on there, but I can talk a little bit about the problem of I'm looking at that fiber optic cable passing by me, and why can't I have a connection off it? And that is something that the commission has asked in recently in one of its proceedings. That is based on the governor's executive order about broadband for all. And in the executive order, he says, hey, I think Caltrans should be working with the CPUC, but should be working with CDT, and you guys need to figure this thing out. And I think you need to put a plan together. And, so there's this high level stuff going on. And we took our part of that and started a proceeding and said, and one of the questions that we have begun to ask for communities particularly is, what do you do when there is this situation? And so for us, that becomes, we've got some tools in our pocket. Do we have some examples of areas? And for you who are have some specific examples, I would steer you to talking to your local advocates about that so that they can present what your situation is as a part of the CPUC's proceeding, and that is with the Redwood Coast Consortium with Connie Stewart, or with Access Humboldt through Sean McLaughlin. And you should be able to find all those people. And if you don't, email Maya and she will get you there.
So there's a couple questions that are specific to regions, and I think into the map that you brought up. Sean McLaughlin, actually, who you just mentioned, was asking whether or not Blue Lake was considered served and therefore mostly not eligible. I know you and I talked about that, but I think that would be great to clarify for the audience, the different colors. And he also commented that it looked like from the map that Soham was the most promising area in Humboldt County for potential expansion.
Yes to both of those. So The eligibility for Rdos is if a service provider has put their hand up and said, I offer service of 25.3 there. And the FCC is doing this based on service providers' information that they provide to them twice a year. It's called 477 data. Sorry to be a little bit geeky about that. But based on that, the FCC has said Blue Lake is served. So it is not eligible for Rdos, but those areas around it are. Now, that's not to say that if a service provider would win in those areas around Blue Lake, that they're not prohibited from providing service there, you know, under the proper circumstances. So they could say, oh, great, if I'm doing it over there and I'm doing it over here, I'll do it in the middle as well. Wouldn't that be fabulous to have choices in Blue Lake? To the second part about SOHUM, in southern Humboldt County, there is quite a higher concentration of locations, and the FCC pays basically based on locations. So more locations within a census block means more money to support, and it's more rural. So the FCC's model for that support says it must be harder to get there. And I think that, you know, all of you people out in Petrolia would say, I got it, Karen. It's tough out here. So, yes to the second question as well.
I actually wanted to pick up on something I think you just said. You said within a census block. Is that correct? Yep. So yep. We've recently been undergoing a census across the United States. Yep. When does that information get updated and integrated in terms of these kinds of strategic plans?
So the FCC's auction is going next week. So they've already sent out the eligible census blocks, and their information is based on the 2010 census. So so that much is a done deal. I don't know, this is phase 1 of the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. So with any leftover money and some small billions, they will be having phase 2 of that. So, and phase 2 is not planned yet. So that money could be considered under 2010. And there'll also be a lot of challenges, like somebody's going to say, you know, you excluded the census block and no way is that served under 25.3. So some of those census blocks might come up again in the phase 2 of the auction.
So I think this is a question for both of you. Jana, you shared some flashy headlines from the LOCO, the Last Coast Outpost. And I know that some of those were about backhoes and other things that have interrupted our telecom resilience up here on the North Coast. So in addition to power outages, what are the biggest vulnerabilities to internet and cellular service here on the North Coast? And are backhoes and other hyper-local events still able to create wide-spanning outages across the region?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take it first, and then I'll ask Karen to join me. But what we've seen is, and we brought this to the, I sit on the California Disadvantaged Communities Advisory Group, and it was a group that was formed under SB 350. It's meant to provide information to or input from disadvantaged communities, and tribes are included in that definition, to the CPUC and the CEC. Now it's more tailored toward power and transportation issues, but as we've said throughout this presentation, the lines are blurred, and all of these, power, telco, and electrified transportation are 3 legs of the same stool. And so the vulnerabilities, I think, to our telco up here certainly include the lack of enough backup power at each cellular tower or component. And I actually asked Karen to clarify this for me, but depending on what's happening in an individual tower or an individual component, they can use a lot of power if they're trying to shove out a lot of data from emergency response agencies, say, at the same time. And so I think we need to get more strategic, and as we've heard, the telco companies receive public monies, and a considerable amount of public monies, to make darn sure that these infrastructure components stay up and running for us in emergencies. Karen, you can speak to this, but 72 hours is supposedly the minimum, but we didn't see that. We didn't see anywhere close to that. And so, so power outages are an issue. And then I'll just say one last thing, which is, but we need, just like we need with regular, good old fashioned emergency power, we need clean options for that. So we cannot just, like we've done in the past, roll a bunch of diesel generators out to do this. It needs to be pre-planned, solar and battery storage, or just battery storage that's charged from an increasingly cleaner power grid and is on standby there for that particular cell tower. So we need to make sure that we just don't do kind of knee-jerk reactions that we've seen in the past for this emergency power, but we do need it.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I think is most important.
Yeah. The diesel thing is just, it's a huge problem. As you saw from last October, it's a really fast thing, but it's really dangerous, and the pollutants from it are just crazy. I mean, the Hoopa reservation was running for a lot of the summer on these huge diesel engines because they were working on the transmission lines there, and it just doesn't do a thing for the air quality. And increasingly, cellular carriers are co-locating their facilities on the same tower, and there's defensible space around them and all those kinds of things. So they have the opportunity with our order to not use diesel. We don't say that you have to do that. So to be able to do some planning for it, or for the providers who maintain those cell towers on their behalf, they certainly can use greener technologies for that. I would also say there's also the self-generating incentive program, the SGIP program of the CPUC for vulnerable households to be able to have battery backup for that. And you can check the CPUC's website to see if your house or facility qualifies for that particular program. Again, but they're almost a stopgap to your larger thinking, Jana, to be able to have greater resiliency in a more planned way. Oh, backhoes. Yes, so backhoes are a constant problem. 811, call before you dig. In my experience in looking at outage reports, a bigger problem than backhoe around here, because you don't have a lot of communication facilities, is cars and trucks running into telephone poles. And that's just a thing.
Yeah, and I'll just add one more thing. It's not quite a vulnerability, but it is a part of it affects the speed of that we can move to upgrade these things. So in that picture that was on a part of my slides that had the ladder trucks, like the 4 or 5 ladder trucks in one picture, that was a situation where what we were doing there was replacing the telephone pole and reconfiguring some electrical lines for the microgrids. But we had to coordinate with all of the service providers that were using that pole, which I think was 4 or 5. And they all had to be there on the same day to have their own ladder truck to lift their each individual cable off that pole and hold it there while well, that pole was removed and the new pole was put in, and then they, so I think we're also vulnerable in the way that the amount of stakeholders and just the way that this now essential utility has formed over time. And so it's my personal opinion, this is not speaking for anybody, that this is now a utility. And so maybe the for-profit model doesn't work anymore. Maybe this region needs to get its arms around more of a community-owned effort. Redwood Coast Energy Authority made great strides in that, as well as some of the tribes and other communities here in taking more control over the energy utility and using that to actually create a lot of economic benefit and capacity building in the process. So it seems to me like with all of this, we need to look at what we can do as a community in a region to exercise more control over those vulnerabilities, and then also just the provision of this utility. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. Decision making, the big rule in business is that you have all of these efficiencies from having a nationwide something, and I mean, you got nationwide price plans here. You've got decisions making going on. I don't know how many states over, right? And it doesn't work for the area, right? It just doesn't. I've heard a lot of fed up. I don't know where the level of fed up is, but hopefully it's getting high enough to get to what you want out of it. But it's possible. It is so possible to do. Just look at the issue of affordability, right? I mean, the rate of poverty and income challenged in Humboldt County is huge. So some nationwide metric on affordability is going to be helpful here? No, it's not. So that local consideration in what you're doing and what you can do here is the advantage of having local control, as you said, like Redwood Coast Energy, and some of the service providers, the Karuk with the KRBI project, they are not caring at all what happens in Los Angeles. They care what's happening right here, and there can be more of those kind of projects.
Yeah, and I think just to again, we'll get to more questions here in just a second, but I think just to add to that, it is, well, we've had good luck with our projects of really crafting a government-centered but public-private partnership on top of sort of a government sort of community benefit model. And your slide that showed sort of those different scenarios and the specific cities that have implemented them in those ways, I think gives us a starting point to work with our private development partners that are already here in the region, that are going to be here increasingly in the region, and just make sure that that again we're on the front end of this thing rather than the back end.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, you might want to say something like, could you hire local people to climb those telephone poles? I mean, really? Do you have to bring in a contractor from, I don't know, Nevada or wherever it is they come from, right? I mean, these kinds of things make a big difference. Yeah.
We have a question.
Maya, what else have we got here?
We have a question from Connie, actually, for you, Karen. She says, last time there was a really promising federal program, the CPUC offered providers a 10% match so that providers could have an advantage for providing. This time the CPUC did not offer any money, but added it as a question to the proceeding. Can you explain why that decision was made?
I'm not sure what you're... So in the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, there is a proposal that is out for comment now that provides what's called kicker funds to do more things with your RDOF money. So essentially, it would award, the proposal says that if you are an RDOF winner, after you win your RDOF, you can apply to the CPUC and get an extra approximately 10% or approximately 20% if you do what's called the level 1 work or the level 2 work. And level 1 was to provide an open access architecture at the middle mile or the last mile. And that the service provider, because these are in very rural areas and very near many of the tribes, that the service provider must use the tribal consultation policy to engage with the tribes in the area. And then also offered an option so that if you would build RDOF faster than the RDOF rules, you would get this money. And then at a second layer, there was some other criteria regarding indefeasible rights of use or carrier of last resort responsibilities for an extra bit. So that is an offer that's out now. The commission has not made a decision on that at the moment, but have published a staff proposal for doing that.
Karen,
Okay, Maya, bring us another one.
let me jump in here, use my
Sorry, there's a bunch of acronyms on that one.
No. Could you just explain one term that you just used, which is carrier of last resort? Because that comes with, as I understand it, some dedicated public funding and some responsibilities. So do you mind just briefly talking about that? I know we have like 3 minutes left, but I think it's important.
Yeah, no problem. I can do this in 3 minutes. Carrier of last resort is also called provider of last resort. So in California, a telephone company within its territory must provide voice service when a customer requests. Absolutely must. There's certain contingencies on that based on how far out you are, but there are tariffed rates to be able to provide that service. Like you couldn't be on top of Mount Lassen, for instance, but within a service provider's territory. And those carriers of last resort in California are Consolidated Communications, AT&T and Frontier, and 13 small LECs that have a small territory. And we pay the carriers to do that. And I think it's pretty clear that they haven't done a very good job with it. And that rule also doesn't apply to broadband. So that's a bit of a problem. I don't know if you've seen the AT&T announcement that they are not taking new additions for their DSL service. So that's about to be a not very helpful situation if your only provider is AT&T.
Yeah, and I think for many people that's the case here. So
Yes.
we definitely have some work to do. It looks like Arnie has joined us for 1 minute of wrap up, but I just want to say before we do this, Karen, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to speak with you, and you're so knowledgeable, and we're so fortunate to have you here on the Redwood Coast. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been absolutely great. I enjoy these conversations, and I really appreciate the invitation, and Maya for your facilitation as well. So thank you.
And thank you so much to both of you, Karen and Jana, and also to Maya. And thanks everyone for joining. I just wanted to remind everyone that next week's talk on October 29th, Dr. Miles Lennon will speak starting at 5:30 p.m. And also just want to let everyone know or remind everyone that a recording of today's presentation will be made available later this fall semester. And that can be found at shotcenter.org/events. And you can also find registration for upcoming webinar events at that same address. So again, a huge thanks to Karen and Jana and Maya for facilitating, and hope everyone has a great evening.